The ship smelled like burning rock and old smoke. That was the first thing Dale noticed when they let him out of the transit pod 11 days ago. The Dravhari ran their ship hot. Not uncomfortable, not exactly, but warm in the way a forge room is warm. You stopped noticing it after a while. Mostly. He was in the middle of cataloging soil samples from Dravhari colony sites when the door opened. He did not look up right away because nobody ever came to the human annex. The annex was 3 rooms bolted to the side of the ship like an afterthought, which is exactly what it was. Humans were guests here. Junior guests. Then he registered who was standing in the doorway, and he put down his sample container. Ravan was the oldest Dravhari Dale had ever seen. His scales were the color of cold iron, pale at the edges. He wore the long ceremonial sash of a high keeper, deep red with black threading, and he stood with the kind of stillness that very old things have. He had never once come to the human annex, not in 11 days. He did not say hello. The Dravhari did not really do greetings the way humans did. "A young royal has declined nourishment," Ravan said. His voice came out low and dry like something scraped across stone. "For 9 days." Dale waited. He was not sure what this had to do with him. "The diplomatic summit reconvenes in 6 days," Ravan continued. "It cannot reconvene under grief. You understand." Dale understood. If the hatchling died, the summit would not happen. 3 years of careful, exhausting diplomacy would not happen. He was a xenobiologist, not a diplomat, but even he understood that much. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Ravan looked at him for a long moment. "Come and observe, nothing more." They walked through the main corridor in silence. The flame lamps were burning low today, which Dale had learned was not decorative. It was a sign that something in the royal quarters was wrong. The Dravhari burned their lamps in sync with the health of their household. He had not known what it meant until now. The hatchling chamber was large and very warm. The floor was black obsidian with heat running through it. In the center was a wide, flat slab, and on it lay Sora. Small. Dale had not expected small. He had read about hatchlings in the briefing documents, but reading about them and seeing one were different things. Her scales were still coming in, pale gold and soft-looking, not hard yet the way adult Dravhari scales were. Her wings were pressed flat against her back. She was thin in a way that made his chest tighten a little. Not dramatically thin, not dying thin, but the kind of thin that says this has been going on for a while and nobody has fixed it. Around the edges of the chamber stood 6 Dravhari specialists, all in the white sashes of the healer class. They were doing nothing. They were standing there being helpless in a very dignified way. Dale was told to stay near the back wall. He sat on the floor against it, which seemed to confuse one of the specialists, but nobody told him to stop. He pulled out his ration pack because he had skipped lunch and he was genuinely hungry, and he did not think this was a formal enough situation to require him to be hungry on purpose. He opened the pack. He pulled out a strip of dried mango. He did not think about it. He was watching Sora and thinking about the 9-day timeline and what a compound deficiency might look like in a hatchling, and whether the Dravhari had done any blood panel equivalent. He had the mango halfway to his mouth when Sora's head came up. She had been lying flat, eyes mostly closed. Now both eyes were open and aimed at him. They were gold, lighter than her scales, and very sharp for a creature that had allegedly been too weak to eat. She stared at the mango piece in his hand. He went still. She slid off the slab. Not stumbled, not crawled. She moved with a low liquid motion, like water finding a crack, and crossed the chamber floor toward him. Every specialist in the room stopped breathing. Ravan made a sound that was not quite a word. She stopped in front of Dale and pushed her nose against his hand. He did not move. He was not sure what moving would do. She sniffed the mango. Then she took it out of his fingers very gently and ate it. She chewed it twice and swallowed. Then she looked at his hand again. He very slowly opened the ration pack all the way and set it on the floor in front of her. She ate everything in it. The dried mango, the pressed grain bar, the small packet of fruit mix, the 2 squares of dark chocolate, and the single sad cracker he had been saving for later. She ate all of it with focused, systematic attention, the way someone eats when they have been waiting a long time for something to taste right. The room was absolutely silent. Dale looked up. Every Dravhari specialist was staring at him. Ravan had both hands pressed flat to his chest in what Dale had learned was an involuntary gesture of shock. Sora finished the last cracker and sat back on her haunches. She looked at Dale with great seriousness. Then she put her head on his knee and closed her eyes. He looked down at her. He looked up at the room. He said the only thing that came to mind. "I have more in the annex." By the next morning, everyone on the ship knew. Dale found this out when he tried to walk to the water dispenser, and 3 Dravhari crew members stopped talking the moment he came around the corner. They did not look away fast enough. He had spent enough time around people trying not to stare at him to recognize it immediately. He got his water and went back to the annex and sent a message to Ambassador Farron that said, "Something may have happened. Please advise." Farron arrived in 12 minutes, which was record time for a man who usually moved like he was navigating a minefield. He closed the annex door behind him and stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets and the expression of someone deciding how alarmed to be. "Tell me exactly what you did," Farron said. Dale told him, the ration pack, the mango, the silence, Sora eating the cracker last and then putting her head on his knee. Farron listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. "She ate," Farron said. "She ate," Dale confirmed. "A 9-day refusal. She just ate." Farron rubbed the back of his neck. "Do you understand that 3 factions in the Royal Circle already have opinions about what this means?" Dale said he did not understand that. "One group thinks you have a gift from their ancestor spirits. One group thinks you did something to her food. And one group is arguing about whether a human bonding event with a royal hatchling has any legal weight under their inheritance code." Farron looked at him steadily. "All of this started 6 hours ago." Dale thought about this for a moment. "She was hungry," he said. "Yes, and you were the one holding food." Farron pulled out a chair and sat down. "Stay in the annex for now. Don't go anywhere without me or Ravan. And for the love of everything, do not feed her anything else until we know what we're dealing with." What they were dealing with arrived in the form of ship matron D. Hess the following afternoon. D. Hess was different from Ravan. Where Ravan carried the weight of tradition in every movement, D. Hess moved fast and looked at things directly and asked questions without spending time on ceremony first. She came to the annex alone, sat across from Dale, and put a flat recording device on the table between them. "List every item in the ration pack," she said. He listed them. She recorded everything. Then she asked him to describe each item in detail: origin, base ingredients, how it was processed, what gave it its taste. He spent an hour explaining what dried mango was. She asked about the sugar content, the acid content, how long it had been dried, and at what temperature, whether the process changed the chemical makeup in any way he knew of. He told her what he knew. He sent a data request to the Human Research Archive for the rest. She came back the next day with results. She sat down in the same chair and looked at him with the expression of someone who has found an answer they were not expecting. "The mango," she said, "there is a compound in it, a particular acid-sugar structure. It matches a receptor in hatchling biology that we have known about for a long time." She paused. "We stopped thinking about it because the fruit that triggered it was declared functionally absent from our world roughly 200 years ago. The receptor remained. We simply never considered that anything else might activate it." Dale sat with that for a moment. "She wasn't sick," he said. "No, she was correct," D. Hess said, and the way she said it had something strange in it, not quite grief, not quite awe. Her body was refusing food that could not satisfy the receptor. She was doing what hatchlings have always done when the right food is absent. She held out. For 9 days. Hatchlings can hold longer than that. D. Hess looked at her recording device. They did during the extinction period. We lost many of them. We thought it was illness. We did not know what to look for. Dale thought about the small, thin hatchling on the obsidian slab. Waiting. Not sick. Just waiting for something that tasted right, from a world she had never been to, brought by a person who only had it because it was cheap and shelf-stable and fit in a pack with room to spare. He was still sitting with that when the door opened, and Vora came in. She was 4 years old in Dravhari years, which made her a juvenile, which meant she was roughly the size of a large horse, and moved with the contained energy of something that had not yet decided whether to be patient or not. Her scales were deeper gold than Sara's, hardened already, and she looked at Dale the way someone looks at a locked door they cannot decide whether to knock on or kick in. "What did you do to my sister?" she said. It was not a question. D. Hess made a small sound that might have been the Dravhari equivalent of clearing her throat. Dale explained. He kept it simple. The compound, the receptor, the mango, he did not make it dramatic. He said it the way he would say it in a research note. Vora listened. She said nothing for a long time. Then she looked at D. Hess, who gave a small nod of confirmation. Vora looked back at Dale. She did not apologize for the tone she had come in with. She did not thank him either. She just turned and left, which D. Hess quietly told him afterward was a better response than she had expected. Dale went back to his sample cataloging. He had 6 trays left. He thought he should probably ask someone to restock his ration packs. Sora decided Dale's left boot was the correct place to sleep. This was not negotiable. He discovered this on the 3rd morning after the ration pack incident when he woke up to find her curled around his feet with her tail tucked under his ankle. He had not heard her come in. He did not know how she had opened the annex door. When he asked Ravan about it later, Ravan looked at him with the expression of someone who has stopped being surprised by things. Hatchlings that have bonded to a provider do not recognize barriers, Ravan said simply. She went through a sealed door, Dale said. Yes. He let it go. Sora followed him to his work table. She sat on his research notes in a way that made it impossible to read them without lifting her head first, which she permitted only if he had something for her to eat in his other hand. She had opinions about what she would eat and what she would not. She ate dried mango, apricot, 2 kinds of compressed grain bar, and a particular type of root chip from the human food stores that Dale did not even like that much but had packed anyway. She would not eat the chocolate a second time. She had tried it once and walked away from it with a specific expression that Dale could only describe as personal offense. He made a log of everything. D. Hess stopped by every afternoon and added her own notes to it. The log was growing into something more formal than a log. It was becoming a dietary record, and then a dietary guide. And then, after D. Hess brought in 2 other specialists and a senior archivist, something that got filed into the Dravhari Royal Medical Archive under the heading of Supplementary Hatchling Nutrition, with Dale listed as the primary contributor. He found out about the listing from D. Hess. She mentioned it the way you mention something that is obviously true and therefore does not require much announcement. He stared at her for a moment and then wrote it down in his own notes because he was not sure anyone at the Human Research Station would believe him if he said it out loud. Meanwhile, the diplomatic summit had resumed. Farron was managing something complicated. The Dravhari Royal Circle wanted information about Dale, not his research credentials, not his diplomatic clearance level. They wanted to know his family structure, his position in the human hierarchy, whether he had existing bonds or obligations that would complicate a formal provider arrangement. Farron explained several times that human social hierarchy did not map neatly onto Dravhari clan structure, and that Dale was a junior researcher on a temporary rotation, not a clan elder or a bonded specialist. The Royal Circle found this interesting, rather than disqualifying. Farron told Dale about these conversations in brief updates that all had the same slightly strained quality. Dale listened, returned to his work, and fed Sara an apricot slice. The politics were real. He understood that. But Sara was sitting on his left foot again, and he had a soil sample that needed a second reading, and there were only so many things he could hold in his head at once. Vora came back on the 5th day after her first visit. She did not look like she was there for a specific reason. She looked like she had ended up in the annex by accident and was going to act as though this were true for as long as possible. She looked at the photographs he had pinned to the annex wall. He had printed them from his archive Earth markets, outdoor ones, the kind where different foods were laid out in open bins, and the light came through cloth awnings, and everything looked a little chaotic. He put them up because looking at them made the annex feel less small. Vora looked at them for a while. Then she asked what the round orange things were. He told her they were clementines. She asked what they tasted like. He described it. She asked if they grew everywhere on Earth or only in specific regions. He explained the growing regions. She asked if humans had ever let a food go extinct. He said yes, quite a few of them. She was quiet for a moment. She looked at Sara, who was asleep on his boot with one small wing half open. We did not know, Vora said. She was not talking to Dale specifically. We watched them stop eating and we called it illness and we treated the wrong thing for 200 years. She turned back to the photographs. You kept yours, some of them. Not on purpose mostly, Dale said honestly. We got lucky with some, lost others without noticing until it was too late. Vora looked at him then, really looked at him, the way she had not quite done in the first visit. That is also something we did, she said. She left shortly after. He did not think she had meant to say that last part, but she said it anyway, and he did not write it in his research notes. Some things were not his to file. The summit produced its first signed document 2 days later. Not a trade agreement, not a border arrangement. A joint botanical survey, specifically targeting Dravhari worlds that might still have species carrying the receptor compound, cross-referenced with Earth botanical data on plants that produced similar structures. It was a small document, 3 pages. Farron described it as modest. The Dravhari archivist who signed it used a word that translated roughly as necessary, which D. Hess told Dale was actually high praise in formal Dravhari language. Dale read the document once and set it aside. Sora had stolen his last apricot while he was reading it, and was now sitting 3 feet away pretending she had not done this. He opened a new food container and held out a piece of dried mango. She came back immediately. He thought that was fair enough. The transfer notice came on a Tuesday, which felt random in the way that all bureaucratic things feel random. Dale's rotation on the Ashvara was set to end in 3 weeks. He was expected to return to the Human Research Station, hand over his field data and be reassigned. Standard procedure. He had known it was coming. He told Sara about it without meaning to. He was talking to himself, the way he did when he was processing something, and she was on his left boot in her usual spot. He said it out loud. I have to leave in 3 weeks. Sara lifted her head and looked at him. He felt immediately guilty, which was absurd. She was a hatchling. She did not understand rotation schedules. She stopped eating the next morning. Not completely. She ate when Dale was in the room. But D. Hess noted that during the 2 hours Dale had spent on an observation session in the ship's lower levels, Sara had refused everything offered and had sat facing the corridor door. When Dale came back and the door opened, she had moved to her spot on his boot before he finished taking off his jacket. D. Hess documented it as provider proximity feeding dependence. She said it in the same tone she used for everything else, level and precise, but she looked at Dale for a moment longer than usual afterward. He sent Farron a note. The note said, I may have a problem, please advise. Farron arrived faster than the last time. He sat down and listened to Dale describe the situation. His expression went through several phases. He ended up at something that looked like resigned acceptance. "She'll adjust," Farron said. "They all do." Dale did not say anything. Farron looked at him. "You're not convinced?" D. Hess says provider bonds in hatchlings this age are not temporary attachments. They're developmental. Breaking one early causes the same physiological stress as the original food refusal. He paused. "I looked it up." Farron was quiet for a moment. "You looked it up," he said. "I'm a xenobiologist," Dale said. "Looking things up is what I do." Farron left and sent 3 messages to the diplomatic office in the next 2 hours. Dale knew this because Farron told him about it afterward, in the manner of a man reporting damage. The night before the issue was supposed to be formally raised in the summit, Ravan came to the annex alone. He did not come in the way he had the first time, urgent, efficient, practical. He came in and sat down in the chair D. Hess used and put his old iron-gray hands flat on the table and looked at them for a moment. Then he said, "When a hatchling names a provider, we do not remove the provider." Dale waited. "This is not a tradition from ceremony," Ravan continued. "It is older than ceremony. It is from the years when hatchlings chose, and the choice was not overridden because overriding it meant losing the hatchling entirely." He looked up. "We learned that the hard way, as you might say." Dale said he understood. "I did not want a human involved," Ravan said. He said it without apology as a statement of fact. "I want you to know that I said so 3 years ago when the diplomatic mission was first arranged. I said humans were too different, too unpredictable, too soft to understand what this ship carries." He stopped. He looked at the corner of the room where Sara was asleep on a folded section of Dale's spare jacket. "I was not wrong about the difference," Ravan said, "but I was wrong about what it would cost us." He left without waiting for a response. Dale sat with that for a while. The diplomatic office came back to Farron the next morning. The message was polite, formal, and deeply confused. It said that the Dravhari Royal Circle had submitted a formal staffing request for a named human specialist, which was a category that did not exist in the Human Diplomatic Registry, and that the request was being evaluated by 3 different departments simultaneously because nobody could agree on where it belonged. Farron forwarded it to Dale with a note that just said, "This is your fault." The formal title the Dravhari had submitted translated into human language as something close to designated provider of nourishment to a bonded royal. There was no existing human equivalent. The diplomatic office had added a note to the file saying they were creating a new category to handle it. Dale's rotation extension came through 4 days later. Indefinite, pending review. Farron stopped by the annex to deliver the news in person and stood in the doorway looking at Sara, who was eating a piece of apricot off Dale's research table with complete disregard for the soil samples next to it. 12 years of diplomatic service," Farron said, "and the breakthrough moment is a mango." He left. Vora came by later and sat against the far wall without saying why. She watched Sara eat. She watched Dale gently move the soil samples out of reach. After a while she asked if there were other earth fruits she had not seen yet. He pulled up his archive and showed her. She did not take notes, but she looked at each one carefully. That evening Dale opened his field journal and wrote, "First contact is supposed to be about language treaties and who controls which systems. Nobody briefed me on fruit." He looked at the entry. He thought about Ravan sitting at the table with his hands flat and his old eyes on the corner where a small gold hatchling was sleeping. He thought about Vora asking questions she framed as academic. He thought about D. Hess filing his food log into a 200-year gap in the Royal Medical Archive. He closed the journal. Sara moved in her sleep and resettled on his boot. He did not write anything else. Some things did not need more words than they already had.